Talk. We are speaking with Leslie Shannon from Nokia,
Hello.
and we're going to be talking about the smart way to approach these strategic partnerships for your startup. So I don't want to steal any of the limelight. Leslie, please give yourself a great introduction. Tell everybody more about you.
Okay, so I'm Nokia's head of ecosystem and trend scouting is my actual title. I'm located in Silicon Valley, and my main role is to look at the new innovations, sorry, that's a little redundant, but innovations that are coming from technologies other than the telecommunications world. And that's actually really important because I've been with the company for 21 years. I had a front row seat for the crashing and the burning of the handset part of our business, which was kind of, very public. That's what everybody knows us for. First it was the handsets, and then it was the failure of the handsets. It's so we still exist as a company, in case you didn't know. We are a B2B company. We make the network products and solutions for the actual creation of the network, both fixed and mobile. And so our main customers are the phone companies and large enterprises of the world that want to have their own networks. And so, but the reason that I have this job and that Nokia actually really has leaned into looking at what other industries are doing in terms of innovation is that we learned the hard way that if you don't do that, then disruption can come and wipe you out very quickly. So I'm looking both, a little bit kind of out of like, uh-oh, what are we missing? But also it turns out that if you look in other industries, that's also where you can find opportunity. So opportunities coming from other industries that I can then tell both Nokia and our customers, the phone companies of the world, about, so that they can make sure that they're building the networks that are necessary to support the new innovations that are coming.
Wow, fantastic. I love how you're like, oh, we learned the
Mm.
we learned from our past mistakes. Let's not make that happen again.
Exactly. If something that tragic is going to happen to you, the least you can do is learn from it.
Yes. It kind of goes very parallel to the startup world, where it's we actually drive to fail and then learn from that and then scale on.
There is no failure, only learning. That is,
Yeah.
yes, that is correct. Yes.
Great. Now, this summit is all about building these solutions for 5G. I would love for you to kind of tap inside and dive into this subject and really help us understand why the partnerships aspect of this is so important.
Yeah, and let me talk a little bit about Nokia's role within uh, within 5G, particularly the fact, I mean, we are focused on the network. Now, there are still Nokia phones out there, but those are manufactured under license by another company. We just, kind of sell our name. So no, we're not going to be making any more consumer hardware for 5G. I just want to make that absolutely 100% clear right now. But the role that 5G plays in terms of enabling new kinds of hardware is actually going to be extraordinarily significant. And the reason is something that I call splitting the chip. Because the idea is, we've got all these beautiful phones out here and gaming consoles and laptops, and they're basically little supercomputers. And the reason that they are little supercomputers is that they have these, giant chips in them. Great, the chips allow all kinds of processing, but they also cost a lot. They generate a lot of heat, and they run your battery down pretty fast. So the solution of having the big chip in the device has actually created three new problems about heat and short battery time. So multiple industries right now, individually, and this is why it's important, I'm looking across, outside of telco, lots of different stuff. They are all coming to the same conclusion that, wait a second, in order for my industry to progress the way that I want it to, I need to have a smaller, cheaper chip in my end device, but I need to have more computing overall. So wait a second, that means 5G can actually be the thing that has the bandwidth and the latency to connect a teeny tiny chip that does the minimum possible processing for the end device, thus making the end device have a longer battery life, not get hot, and be a lot cheaper. if it connects to a bunch of servers that are sitting somewhere in the network that can actually do the lion's share of the actual computer processing, that's the amazing revolution that 5G is bringing. And the reason we haven't seen a huge amount of these use cases yet is that actual physical work, that physical understanding of what are the processes that go on the little teeny chip, and then how does that actually work, and how does the architecture work, and how does all the software work to knit these things together, that is R&D work that is still happening. Companies like Nokia, companies like Qualcomm, we're all working on this. And so yeah, but the industries that are actually relying on this split chip scenario, robotics, drones, augmented reality and virtual reality wireless headsets that are actually wearable, visual analytics, cloud gaming, all of them require this particular scenario. And you will notice that actually none of those are telco itself, right? So right, so that means that taking a really easy, simple example, doing some kind of a visual analytics project. If we, Nokia, are working and building a 5G network for Telco A, and Telco A wants to provide some kind of visual analytics product. Maybe it's a factory thing where somebody is building something and there's a camera that's watching their hands, and if there's something that happens that's out of tolerance, then the visual analytics, you get high H definition video being carried over to off the camera analytics are being done, and then some kind of messaging coming back to the system to let the guy know what you just did, you need to fix it before it actually goes and the mistake goes further down the process, or whatever it is. But okay, the operator might be the one providing that 5G network, and the understanding of the split chip might come from the work that we've done in our R&D, but the actual visual analytics itself, that's going to come from another partner. Mm-hmm. And so the necessity of the actual thing that the service is that 5G is going to enable is necessarily going to come from outside of the world of telco. And so that means that in order for 5G to fully come to fruition, the full promise that it has for both consumer and enterprise use cases, it's going to need to be all about the partnerships.
I love that. So nice. Now, the partnerships are obviously going to be this massive contributor to the success and the final rollout of 5G and the use cases. A lot I know from working in startups that the golden prize is to work with these larger companies. A lot of people think the hardest part is getting that introduction to people that work in these companies. But somebody like you has that insight. Oop. Okay, let me cut that out.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that thought was, start over.
Okay, so it's great that we're talking about these partnerships, and when a startup has those logos of those big companies on their pitch deck or on their website, it's all fantastic. But there is something more that startups need to know about working with corporates. It's not just getting the sale or getting that introduction. Perhaps you can walk us through some of these bigger misconceptions that startups have about working with larger companies.
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad we're touching on this topic, because I get I because of my outward facing role, I get these kinds of requests all the time, like, oh, we'd love to partner with Nokia. The reality is that we actually have a policy of not working with companies unless they have reached a certain level of revenue, and it's a level of revenue that you need to be if you're a pretty mature company, and it's not because we're like mean and evil and we think that startups shouldn't exist. No. We love startups and we love the innovation that they represent. However, in practice, we are a big company and our processes move slowly. And the onboarding process, just the simple mechanics of onboarding somebody into our procurement system, it takes a long time. And we have discovered in the past that a startup has sufficient funds to be able to last all the way down the runway. They may have gone bankrupt before we can actually pay their invoice because the onboarding process is so long. And we are not the only ones. Like I said, I'm sitting here in Silicon Valley. Um, I was talking to somebody who has a company of not particularly gigantic, and the onboarding process with one of the Silicon Valley majors, imagine anybody you want to here, it was more than 6 months. And so that's just to get to be on the list so they can possibly pay your invoices. And so, yeah, I know it's completely horrifying. And I fully apologize for what happens when companies get big, but it's a reality. Now, the good news is though, that in these partnerships for bringing services in 5G, most commonly there's going to be multiple players in the partnerships. And so maybe working with the biggest company is not actually the best strategy for the startup, but maybe picking the smallest company other than yourself in whatever that multivalent partnership is, and working with them and having them be the ones that the payments get through. Or, just assessing real and being realistic, being extremely realistic. How much of a runway do you have? How much cash do you have? How far can you go before you first get that first invoice paid, and be upfront about that.
Mhm.
Don't try to hide it. It's like, well, that is too long for us. We need to find another solution. Otherwise, we're not going to exist by the time this project is done. Everybody understands that in this industry. And so being a little creative about who you work with, and being open about that, and maybe not getting too married to, as you were saying, being a direct partnership with that big logo, but getting to that big logo indirectly
Mhm.
by having the actual monetary partnership with somebody who can pay you a little faster.
I love that. I